What's up, learners? Jamie here from CLA Community Learning Alternatives, and welcome to What the Tech Wednesday, the video version. All right, this week let's talk about Apple. There's a brand new MacBook Air for 2020, and this new model comes with new scissor switches in the keyboard that the company introduced back in the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the last model that they just put out. And the processors have been upgraded to Intel's new 10th generation parts. Apple also lowered the price by $100, with this new MacBook Air now starting at $999, although most people will not get that base model. With the help of Engadget video editor and producer Becca.
So I can't screw it up too bad, right?
From what I can see, it looks like there's still a little headroom. We could tilt up like a literal centimeter. Let's tilt up just a little bit more. Okay, come back to the camera and then zoom in like a click, oh, wait, that's one click less.
Nilay Patel has
really
the full
good.
review.
So there's a new MacBook Air, which is Apple's most popular Mac. The big update happened 2 years ago with a full redesign around a Retina display. This new 2020 model has faster 10th generation Intel chips and a totally new keyboard. Apple's also lowered the price. The base model starts at $999 with a 1.1 gigahertz dual-core Core i3 processor, 8 gigs of RAM, and 256 gigs of storage. I've been reviewing the step-up $1299 model that has a quad-core Core i5 and 512 gigs of storage, which is the version I think most people should get. It's got two Thunderbolt 3 ports, which now support running 6K displays, and a headphone jack, which, well, you know how I feel. Let's start with the most important thing, the new keyboard. It has been a very bad few years for Apple's laptop keyboards, so the switch back to a traditional scissor key design is very welcome. Apple's calling this the Magic Keyboard, and it first arrived on a 16-inch MacBook Pro last year. As it happens, I've been using a 16-inch MacBook Pro for a few months now, and I'm happy to say that the Air's keyboard feels almost exactly the same, which is to say, very good. The keys have a millimeter of travel, they're just clicky enough without being too loud, and overall the whole thing is very solid and very satisfying. There's also zero chassis flex, so you can pound away on this keyboard on your lap or at a weird angle on the couch. I don't really want to give Apple too much credit for updating this keyboard. It took the company way too long to get away from that butterfly design after people started calling out the problems. It's going to take some time to earn back that trust. But history aside, the keyboard is the single most important part of a laptop, and the new MacBook Air's keyboard is extremely good. I also have to say, I greatly prefer this keyboard with the standard top row and function buttons to the touch bar version on the 16-inch MacBook Pro that I've been using. I just don't understand the touch bar. It seems to make basic things like adjusting volume and brightness more complicated without making anything else so much easier that it's worth the trade-off. I know other people feel differently, and I legitimately know people who love the touch bar, like Becca.
Come on.
But I don't, and I think it's really telling that the Air is Apple's most popular laptop, and it doesn't have the touch bar. That's the right choice. The other thing it doesn't have is a touchscreen, and one, touchscreens on laptops are pretty common now, and people seem to like them, and two, if Apple can figure out how to add trackpad support to iPadOS, it can probably figure out how to add touch support to macOS. But for right now, and honestly for the near future, the Mac is mouse and keyboard only. The other new thing from last year are the processors, which are Intel's new 10th generation chips with Intel Iris Plus graphics. Our review unit has a 1.1 gigahertz quad-core Core i5 chip and 8 gigs of RAM in it, and it's been fairly capable. I've been working in Chrome, Slack, and Zoom, and a little Lightroom on the side like I normally do, and it's felt totally solid. That feeling is backed up by the single-threaded Geekbench score, which is basically in line with the 16-inch Core i9 MacBook Pro that I've been using. But this thing still isn't a rocket, and I can definitely push the limits pretty easily. Just opening Lightroom is enough to make the fan speed up, and after a couple edits, it's going full blast. And heavy sustained workloads cause the processor to do some thermal throttling. You can definitely see it with heavy benchmark tests like Cinebench. I asked Apple about thermal throttling and they told me it's by design. They don't think most people need hardcore sustained performance. So the Air is designed to boost the processor up to 3.2 gigahertz as needed and then bring it right back down. But once things heat up, the processor's clock speed is capped at a lower number with the fan going, so the system can manage heat. Again, in pretty average day-to-day use, I never felt any of this thermal management slow things down, which is the entire point. But it's also clear there isn't a ton of headroom if you need a lot of performance all the time. You'll definitely at least hear the fan, and you might experience some slowdowns. I asked for questions on Twitter, and almost all of you wanted to know about the performance gap between the new Air and the 13-inch Pro, and that thermal design is basically the big difference. Apple told me that the MacBook Pro is the better laptop for people who need to push their machine to the limit all the time. It has a more forgiving thermal design and faster turbo boost clock speeds. It can basically run hotter and faster for a longer period of time. The bad news is that the 13-inch MacBook Pro still has that butterfly keyboard. There's a lot of rumors of an update coming, and yeah, we're just gonna have to keep an eye on that. All of that is to say that the Air's performance is totally fine for most day-to-day tasks. But if you regularly use a bunch of demanding applications, you're gonna be hearing that fan a lot. Apple says you can get 11 hours of battery life on the new Air if you're just running Safari to browse the web, but in real life, running Chrome, Slack, and Zoom, I got more like 5 hours of battery life with the screen turned all the way up. I probably could have extended that a little if I turned down the brightness, but this is not the world's brightest screen to begin with. It averages about 400 nits of brightness compared to, say, 625 for the iPhone 11. Those three apps are battery hogs, but at this point, I live in Zoom and Slack all day, every day, and I wouldn't say I'm blown away by the battery life I'm experiencing. And while Safari is way more efficient than Chrome, Chrome is still just a fact of life for a lot of people. As with every Apple product, there's a gap between the results you get if you live entirely within Apple's ecosystem and reality. Speaking of Zoom, the webcam in the Air is the same old 720p webcam Apple's been using forever. It's fine, but it's disappointing that Apple puts some of the best cameras in the industry in the iPhone and sticks with one of the most medium cameras in the Mac. I also got a lot of questions about the MacBook Air versus the iPad Pro with the new Magic Keyboard, since the 11-inch Pro and that keyboard cost about the same as the base model Air, and, well, only you can know the answer in your heart. For me, I'd pick the Air for now. You get a bigger screen, and macOS has fewer limitations on what it can do. Dieter has a whole review of that new iPad Air up on the channel if you want more, but we're gonna have to revisit this debate when that Magic Keyboard case ships in May.
Well, if you're like me and you don't use a Mac and would prefer a Windows laptop, the brand to beat for thin and light computers is Dell. Engadget takes a look at the ultra-portable laptop to beat the 2020 XPS 13. It's the one that I'm drooling over. Let's take a look.
How do you improve on a nearly perfect laptop? We gave the XPS 13 one of our most positive reviews ever last year, and in 2020, Dell has managed to outdo itself again. The latest model has a larger screen with slimmer bezels, a larger keyboard, and a sleeker design. On their own, those aren't exactly life-changing upgrades, but taken as a whole, they make the XPS 13 feel even more refined than before. You could say it's more perfect than perfect. Then again, I shouldn't be too surprised. Only a few months after I reviewed the XPS 13 in 2019, I saw its even more stylish 2-in-1 sibling. Aside from a shallower and controversial keyboard, that convertible was actually better than the standard model in many ways. So it was only a matter of time until Dell brought those design upgrades over to its traditional ultra-portable. So what's different? The most obvious upgrade is that Dell has completely gotten rid of the XPS 13's lower screen bezel. Now the display nearly touches the edge of the keyboard area, and there's no more Dell logo in the way. That effectively gives the computer a slightly taller 13.4-inch screen with a 16:10 aspect ratio. While it's not quite the extra tall 3:2 ratio we've seen on Microsoft Surface laptops, the extra screen space is enough to make working on the notebook a bit more freeing. And it's worth noting that Microsoft's machines still can't match the ultra-thin bezels of Dell's Infinity Edge displays. The XPS 13's 91.5% screen-to-body ratio is also impressive, and it even manages to outdo HP's ultra-sleek Spectre X360. The XPS isn't nearly as flashy as the Spectre, but I actually prefer Dell's understated design. Additionally, Dell has also pushed the keyboard to the edges of the XPS 13 and made the keycaps 9% larger, both of which make for a much more comfortable typing experience. Thankfully, you won't find the maglev keyboard from the 2-in-1 model, which was a not-so-great way of adding feedback to that laptop's shallow keyboard. I didn't mind it, but a lot of other people did. Instead, Dell stuck with the scissor-switch key design the XPS 13 is known for. While it doesn't have the luxuriously deep key travel of the Spectre X360, it still felt better than most Ultrabook offerings. The XPS 13's trackpad is also 17% larger than before, and it feels just as smooth and accurate as the last model. And as you'd expect, the laptop's aluminum case is as sturdy as ever, and this year it feels even smoother to the touch. Once again, you can choose from black carbon fiber or Arctic white color options. They both look and feel great, but I prefer the slick woven glass fiber of the white design. I also appreciated smaller refinements, like the way the hinge barrels are hidden from view, giving the screen more of a dominating presence. In practice, using the new XPS 13 felt a lot like the 2-in-1, except without the ability to twist the screen around. That extra tall display still looks fantastic, and its HDR and Dolby Vision compatibility makes it perfect for Netflix binges. It's slightly lighter than the 2-in-1, between 2.64 pounds and 2.8, though you'd have to forego the touchscreen to really feel the difference. The XPS 13 is also fast enough to handle all of your productivity needs while you're trapped at home devouring YouTube videos. Our review unit came with Intel's 10th gen Core i7 1065G7 CPU and 16GB of RAM, a beefy mid-range setup that currently sells for $1,750. The XPS 13 starts at $999, but that model comes with depressingly low specs: a Core i3 processor, 4GB of RAM, and 256GB of SSD storage. At the time of this review, that model is also unavailable on Dell's website, so we'd recommend going with the 1250 configuration to get 8GB of RAM. And honestly, it's about time Dell gave up on offering a meager 4GB of RAM on any computer, let alone its flagship notebook, especially when you can't upgrade it down the line. On a brighter note, the XPS 13 survived my daily workflow, which typically involves juggling dozens of browser tabs, photo editing, video streaming, and a bit of audio recording, without any issues. The system also lasted up to 15 hours and 55 minutes during our battery test, which typically involves looping an HD video without any energy-saving measures turned on. That's a solid leap over the previous model's 12.5 hours of battery life, and it even outdoes the 2-in-1 by 90 minutes. And while you wouldn't want to buy an ultra-portable with gaming in mind, Intel's 10th gen Iris Plus integrated graphics can eke out some playable Overwatch in 720p with low settings. Just don't expect consistent frame rates. It's more suited to slower games like Minecraft and The Sims or visual novels. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to try an external GPU on the XPS 13's two USB-C Thunderbolt 3 ports, but that's certainly an option if you want to balance portability and gaming performance at home. And while I would have liked to see a full-sized SD card reader, the microSD slot is better than nothing. While Dell didn't exactly revolutionize anything with this year's XPS 13, it's still a huge leap forward from the 2019 model in many ways. The company's Infinity Edge bezel-less screen continues to get more impressive, and every upgrade, like that extra-wide keyboard, feels genuinely meaningful. Once again, Dell has made the ultra-portable to beat.
And finally, if 2020 is going to be known for anything besides current events, it just might be the year of Mario, and that's freaking fantastic. Multiple reports are outlining Nintendo's plans to celebrate 35 years of Mario by releasing a number of remakes from recent years for the Switch, and we're expecting HD versions of most, if not all, of Mario's 3D games, reaching as far back as Mario 64. Check it out.
Hey everyone, as you might know, 2020 is a major milestone year for everyone's favorite Italian plumber that was invented in Japan. Of course, I'm talking about Mario. And yes, that is actually how I say Mario. Please just deal with it for the rest of this video. Anyway, 2020 is going to be a massive year for that guy. Nintendo has a huge list of games in the hopper, ready to go for the rest of the year. The news, quite frankly, it's pretty amazing. So a number of sites have reported on this. VGC was the first, then Eurogamer also supported it, along with Gamatsu and GamesBeat. The reporting says that Nintendo had this big 35th anniversary party planned for E3 2020. Obviously, E3 is canceled, but nevertheless, Nintendo is going to forge forward anyways and release a bunch of Mario-themed 35th anniversary content for the Switch and beyond. So think of it as sort of like a sequel to Super Mario All-Stars, right? You're going to have all of the 3D Mario games in one collection. So you got to imagine that's Mario 64, then Mario Sunshine, which fine, and then those 2 Mario Galaxy games on the Wii and Wii U, plus others. There's also news that a new Paper Mario game could be on the horizon, a completely new game from the ground up. We'll see about that, as well as some sort of remastered version of that 2013 game, Super Mario 3D World. So yes, this is a ton of Mario games in 2020, but think about it. It's not really surprising. Nintendo has been doing this for decades. Look back to 1993 when that original All-Star game came out. You had Super Mario 1 through 3, along with that Lost Levels edition that came out, all of the retro consoles. This is right in their wheelhouse. This is what they do. It's not surprising. It's awesome. And we're probably not just going to see Mario on our Switch screens. There is talks about a film from Universal that features a fully animated Super Mario. And why not? It worked for Sonic. So, of course, all of this news got me thinking. I wanted to try and rank all of my 3D era Mario games. So real quick, you got to say it's Odyssey, 64, Galaxy 2, Galaxy 1, and then you can throw 3D World and 3D Land in there. And then dead last is Super Mario Sunshine, because that is not a good video game. I'm sorry if you're hearing it from me first. You shouldn't be, because you should know this already. It's not a good game. I don't know who thinks it's a good game. I know there's people who do. They're wrong. Anyway, that's at the bottom of the list. I'm curious to hear what your list looks like. And are you like me? And are you just going to rebuy all of these games? Because having these on the go, it's going to be kind of great for my commute. If commuting's a thing again.
And that is all for this week's What the Tech Wednesday from CLA Community Learning Alternatives. Please leave a like, subscribe if you like the content, leave a comment down below if you have some suggestions for other new videos we can make for you, and expand your learning of technology from CLA Community Learning Alternatives. Thanks a lot. Talk to you next time.